What's good? What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Urban Platform Speaks. Make sure to like and subscribe as you come into the channel and check out the content. And with that being said, I want to speak on the situation with Deion Sanders and his son Shedeur Sanders. Right? Uh, you know, I did a podcast over the weekend, and we spoke about Shedeur Sanders and how he was falling in the draft. Right? And so man, when you fall in the draft, all right, so he was projected to go. Some people say he was projected to go like top five or something like that in the first round. But he fell from either being like in the top five, he fell all the way down to 144. So I was, then so you hear reports of like he's arrogant, he's entitled, he's not as good as what what they say he is. And I'm like, okay, that could be that could be true, right? Maybe that's true. But the more I think about it, the more to me it just sounds like collusion. And I'm gonna tell you why I think it's collusion. Deion Sanders himself, a lot of people really don't dig Deion Sanders, and it's people at every level who don't like Deion Sanders. That he have had teammates like here in Baltimore. I used to hear that when Deion Sanders came to the Baltimore Ravens, I heard certain people say they didn't like Deion Sanders because he was like kind of cliquish, and so if you didn't agree with like certain things that Deion Sanders said, he would try to like ostracize you or alienate you, and he caused division in the Ravens locker room. I heard stuff like that, right? So whether it's true or not, I don't know. But you hear like other football coaches at the at all levels, everywhere he been, like other football coaches ain't really dig him because of some of his antics and some of not his antics, but some of the things he say. And so you got to figure that Deion Sanders has always been the kind of person who has been outspoken, and say what he think, you know. And so sometimes that could be good. And I think this time it was bad because um, his son is really paying a price for that. Deion Sanders, not only do he rub people at his on his level the wrong way, but I think some owners and some powerful people in football, he probably rubbed them the wrong way too. And then so when you see his son's like a second generation of Deion Sanders. And so I think that they wanted to show Deion Sanders through uh through hurting his son that you really, for as much as you talk, you really don't have as much leverage as you think you do. And so I think that when Deion Sanders was saying that there's certain teams, I don't know if I'm not gonna play the audio, but Deion Sanders was saying there are certain teams in the league that he don't want his son to play for. And that if they draft his son not going there and stuff like that. And so now you have a situation where all the leverage has been taken away from Shedeur Sanders. Now I seen like a team that don't have no quarterback pass over, and there's several teams like that don't have no quarterback passed over Shedeur Sanders in the draft four times. Four times, if you don't have no quarterback and you pass over this guy four times, it to me, it's not just all about, it's not all about like his antics, like Shedeur Sanders entitled. Most football players, you talking about kids who are like five-star athletes. Five-star athletes, man, these kids are so entitled. These five-star athletes, a lot of times, they are arrogant. So that's not like true and unique to Shedeur Sanders. Like maybe he is uh arrogant, But there have been some kids who have gotten into legal trouble, like a couple days before draft. Kids get caught smoking weed and stuff before the draft. But they and a lot of those cases they overlook that because that they understand that we talking about kids. Kids make mistakes, and if this guy as good as can play football, we're gonna overlook that, you know. But not in this circumstance, right? And so when I think that when Deion Sanders was like, we're not gonna play for certain teams, they took the leverage away from him by dropping his stock. See, I think when he made that statement, it's not always good to let people know what you are going to do. So you saying you're not going to play for, and I think the Cleveland Browns, which the team that he got drafted for, he got drafted to. He said, "Well, we don't want him to play at Cleveland." That's the team who drafted him. But now, because this young man's stock has fallen so far, he don't have no choice but to play for Cleveland. Like if you get drafted top one, top two, or top three, something like that, that's big money. Though the first kids that go in that draft, they get signing, but they get paid more. Number one, then they get signing bonuses. Then they in line for sponsors and stuff like that. If the sponsor like their image and that's a lot of money on the line right there. And so I think Deion Sanders did his son more harm than good by speaking publicly. If you know that certain organizations that you don't want your kid to go to in the NFL, like what good does that do for you to tell somebody, like state that to the public, letting people who have power in the league, letting them know what your intentions are. And they say, well, if you're gonna hold out, we're gonna hold you out. We drop your value. And now you're playing for the team, one of the teams that you said you wouldn't want to play for. And Shedeur Sanders can't sit out, you know. And the Cleveland Browns, they have 4 or 5. I'm thinking 5, but they might have at least 4 quarterbacks on their roster right now. So you got 4 quarterbacks on your roster, and Deion Sand and Shedeur Sanders was the last one drafted to that roster, right? At number 144. So they drafted a quarterback before him, and I think they had like at least 2 or 3 other already on the roster. So they drafted him. Now somebody told me, they was like, well, if they drafted him, so maybe later on they can use him, that like they can trade him later on. And I was like, you drafted at 144, you don't have no value. You know what I mean? Like if a team, if you get drafted at 144 and they say, well, he don't fit on our team, but we'll trade him. At number 144, unless you get an opportunity to play and you go out there and you start cooking, you don't have a lot of leverage, or you don't have a lot of value that another team was like, well, all right, well, give us Shedeur Sanders for, like how you can't trade a 5th-round draft pick for what? You're not gonna get a 4th, a 3rd rounder. You're not gonna get a 2nd rounder. You're definitely not gonna get a 1st rounder for somebody who was drafted in the 5th round. So he don't have no value. They took all of his leverage, all the value. So and so this was to publicly humiliate Shedeur Sanders. And like Shedeur Sanders is in a position now that not even his father can help him in that situation. His father can't even do nothing. His father can do for him in this situation. And I know, like, as a father, that's probably a hurt, that like he's hurt, you know what I mean? And I know that people who drafted Shedeur Sanders like this know that his father is hurting. He probably blaming himself because he's like, man, some things I said that I shouldn't say. Which I heard Deion Sanders say some of the things he said. right? And I didn't think what Deion Sanders did was any more egregious than what Archie Manning did for his sons. Back when Eli Manning was going to go to San Diego, when he's going to go to the San Diego Chargers. Archie Manning was like, "No, my son not gonna play there. My son gonna fit out. He gonna sit out." Or but see, number one, um, Archie Manning, he didn't he didn't really make those kind of statements until after his son got drafted. Number two, he already had a son in the league, and Peyton Manning was already in the league. So he had a little bit more leverage, whereas though he can make that kind of statement and it not really, and so they did what Archie Manning wanted them to do. They traded him to the Giants, and so the rest is history. But Deion Sanders ain't had that kind of leverage. He played in the league, but he don't play now. So he is no if if Deion Sanders was still in the league and he was shutting down one half of the field like he did back in his heyday, then that's different. Then he'd say, like, all right, y'all gonna have to take my son or I'm gonna sit out. And they were like, all right, we're gonna have to do that. But Deion Sanders, you on the outside talking with no leverage, or telling people what you're going to do and you don't have no leverage. And so I think a lot of that plays into why Shedeur Sanders fell, and now he don't his stock has dropped. So you don't get that money that you would have gotten in the first round. You don't get the signing bonus. That hurts your brand, and now Shedeur Sanders in a position where he's gonna have to fight. You're gonna have to damn near be Tom Brady, and like, what are the odds of you being of Tom Brady? Tom Brady went in the sixth round, right? And he worked his ass off to get to where he was at. So they put Shedeur Sanders in a position where he got to do a Tom Brady in order for for this team, for him to make it in the league. I don't know, like, it's almost like catch and kill. Like, like people they just squash something. They'll they'll buy something, act like they're gonna print it, and then they just don't just shelf it. So they got this kid career, and then I think they just they really just gonna shelve it. And so yeah, man, it's sad. And it's sad for Deion Sanders, and it's sad for Shedeur Sanders, because he is behind at least three other quarterbacks on a team that he said that he didn't want to play for, and yeah, his stock is plummeted. Yeah, so that's my take on it. Make sure to like and subscribe. Also, let me know what you think about, like, do you think it was collusion? I think I definitely think it was collusion. Um, and part of the reason why I think that is just because people just got, the powers that be just probably got tired of Deion Sanders, running his mouth and talking about what me and my son's going to do, and you know what I mean, with no leverage. He can't say, it's not like his son could play baseball like John Elway, and his son was like, "Well, I'm gonna go play for the Baltimore Orioles if y'all, what I mean, if y'all, then but ain't no other, ain't no, I'm sorry, well, I'm sorry, dang, ain't no other professional football league for Shedeur Sanders to run to. you know, um, and they can't play baseball, so he can't do, everybody else who pulled that move, a lot of times they had leverage and they can go somewhere else. Ain't no USFL for Shedeur Sanders to go to, and so they miscalculated, overplayed their hand, and they put them in a position where though they could be colluded against. Um, so yeah, that's my take on it. Make sure to like and subscribe. Also, don't leave a comment. I want to know what you think about this situation. And with that being said, make sure to like I said, I'll check you out in the next video. Peace.